Yeah. Okay, now we're there. I do the broadcast.
There we are. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Woo. Well, thank you all so much for agreeing to be our guest speakers for this session that we thought we were going to talk mainly about living in the intersection of gender, race, and immigration. But things have changed so much. So we want to be very cognizant and conscious of what our community is experiencing right now and just really check in with one another and let the conversation go where it needs to go. Um, so I want to, check in, Lutze, Krystina, how y'all doing? How you feeling? Yeah.
Well, it is a weird time. Not that it's ever a good time, but it's just a weird time to be Black and alive and to be doing certain kind of work. So I literally just text someone as I was trying to figure out this tech stuff. It's really hard to be, it's an interesting time to be Black and the social justice doula right now, because there's a way in which, this work is never an abstraction for me. I'm always in it, and there's no safe distance from my work because I can never put my Blackness, my womanness, and all the other stuff that comes with it on a shelf and be like, okay, we just gonna chill today. And so to constantly see Black death and Black grief and Black life being cut short in several ways, be it by public policy, be it by the police, and then to be a Black person trying to live, trying to survive, and trying to plan for the future, it's just a lot. You're constantly holding heartbreak in one hand and possibility in another and trying to see which one is going to win. Will it be possibility or will it be heartbreak? In the words of Future and Drake, what a time to be alive in all of the ways that means.
Right. I feel that. All I can do is breathe, right? And in the irony of that moment, I just want to take a quick note to say that Spanish and Creole interpretation are available. So excited that we're doing that because
language justice.
Language justice. And so I'm not sure if the phone lines were publicized or not. Do I just read the?
If folks are needing the lines, Monica, our amazing communications and digital fundraiser coordinator, will drop the lines in the comments so that you all can access them. I also want to, Krystina, do you want to give your kind of like thoughts and feelings?
Yeah, I can. I can really quickly just say that it is particularly difficult to do this work that is so deeply personal to us while going through this, right? So there is no, it's like it's not just that you're holding grief and opportunity or progress at the same time, but you're also negotiating how much you are visible in the work, because like we fight for the communities that we exist in. It is not an aspirational or ideological commitment to this work. It is our life. I do this because it is my life. It is my family that I fight for and that I represent. And that personal experience informs my policy, my advocacy, my analysis, et cetera, et cetera. And so to constantly, with my work hat on, be fighting for our people and myself. And I'm also having to, in the current moment, fight for my people and myself in our very existence. And dealing with that trauma. It's actually very traumatizing. And I think that, like, I refuse to watch a video. I've said that multiple times. I don't need visual proof or to be re-traumatized and exposed to Black death for me to have empathy, understanding, and context of the situation. And I challenge everybody to be able to get to a place to do the same, where you don't need video to be able to believe that something is amiss here.
Come on now.
That's good stuff. I mean, at least for me, I think that I automatically go to, these are people, and when you think about $10, right? So I wrestle between the Sandra who wants to really feel what I should be feeling, what I have the right to feel, and also being a leader of an organization and automatically want to go into action. And so I think that that's the duality of what it means to be a leader, a Black leader in this space, and also being real about what the South Florida context has been for Black people, right? And so, and I'm saying Black because it is Black, and I think it's real, and it's sometimes it's hard in South Florida to say Black, and yeah, I'm extremely hurt. I've reached out to a lot of my folks. You know, I see the person, I see my uncle, I see my nephew, I see what my father. I also am reconciling that, you know, in order for folks to die and be Black and have some kind of it be okay, they have to be perfect with. That's not what our justice system. It's just a lot, and then I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, what are they gonna try to throw at us to dehumanize this individual who didn't deserve this? You know, the last kind of I too, Krystina, didn't necessarily watch. I didn't watch the video. I can't stomach that stuff. I don't even watch movies in that kind of way. Like, I don't play those games because I think, you know, people have to remain human to me. And if we continue to do this to ourselves, it'll be like just another story. But, you know, really, I think that I don't know what to do. And I don't know how to make folks understand this is real. And yeah.
You know, I think because George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and thinking about even Tony McDade, the Black trans man in Tallahassee who was killed last night or the night before, I think it's okay that some of us don't know what to do because those are our people. And so grief and mourning is a thing to do. It is a state of being. And so if your grief and mourning looks like, I have to stay in the house, I need to text with my friends, I need to see how they're doing, or I need to lay down, that you are doing a thing. And if you gotta go out in these streets in Minneapolis and tear it down, that too is grief. And so there are varying iterations of grief. We know Black people are not a monolith, and there's gotta be enough space for all of us to be able to feel into this moment, because this is ongoing trauma. This is ongoing gaslighting. This is ongoing, this is just ongoing social death. Just being with that, being with the complications of that, being with the hardness, the toughness, the nastiness of that, that's a lot in and of itself. Mm-hmm. I don't know if, the capitalist impulse is always do something. But when do we get to grieve Black death? Just grieve it and be with it, memorialize it. And in all of its gravitas, in all of its whatever. Like, my God, this was someone's family member. And again, in Minneapolis, right? This is not no city in the South, right? Ain't y'all supposed to be, ain't y'all supposed to have had y'all racial problems solved? Like, Minneapolis, that is a bastion of a lot of liberal, a lot of whatever, and boom, and right there. And so what does it mean to sit with that and be with that? And so to me, because this is our lives, I don't know. It's just like, I'm so angry I could scream, like I'm fighting back tears, because it's just like, how many Black people gotta die and gotta be martyred for people to wake up? Right. Well, like, bruh, how long is the coma?
That's the thing, is that there are a couple of contradictions that I'm holding, right? So I have this rage and anger, and I'm over it, and I'm done with people. I'm gonna be completely honest. That's how I feel. However, there's also this sense of a part of mourning is bearing witness, right? And memorializing. And this is where the hashtags come in. This is where the proliferation of this video and photos and graphics and art and all of these things come from, because if this person was not treated with value, if their life was not deemed valuable, then we have to prove that it's valuable by putting it in your hands. That is forcing you to bear witness. And so I struggle with, I don't need to see another hashtag. I don't need to see another video. I also want to respect this person's life.
Right.
It's not a number. It's not a statistic. It's not, yet another thing. This is an individual human being and fighting for our humanity. And I am tired, so tired of saying we're human. Even in our grief, in our protest, in our priorities, in our literal day-to-day actions, it is, I need to be a certain way, I need to dress a certain way, I need to live in a certain neighborhood, I need to have these aspirations, I need to vote this way, I need to vote, period. All of these things to say, hey, I'm human, I'm doing the things you want me to do, guys. No. So sorry, I talk really quickly when I get excited, so I will slow it down for interpretation. But it is exhausting. It is infuriating. It is also deeply rooted in the history of this country. And for the added layer, which I think, we are a panel of 3 Haitian American women, which I would love to prop up, right? And we are coming at this from all different perspectives and we are doing the work. The key thing too is that as people who have adopted this country as home, although we were all born here, so we are American by all intents and purposes.
Hello.
I'm as American as anybody else, but knowing that being here was a choice, continuing to fight for this country is a choice. Continuing to believe in the idea of America is a choice. And that brings just an added layer to this work and this moment, because it's a lot to continue to fight for something that has not been proven to be real to you.
Mm-hmm. And I think to add on to that, and I'm looking for opportunities to transition as well. I think Black people have always done that. Mm-hmm. We've always imagined and dreamed what we haven't seen or what we haven't experienced, right? And so we've never been human to America, but we continue to push America to see us as human. Mm-hmm. And so we are imagining and we're envisioning a better world or a better country than America is, right? And so I just want to recognize that even the liberties we have right now, it's been us that continue to push at the conscious of America to be like, wait a minute, we're falling short of what we say or who we say we are. This time is hard. Yeah.
We are conscious. Go ahead. We are the conscious of the United States of America, period. If Black people didn't exist in the United States of America, it would make a lot of the mythology of the United States of America easier to buy into. But because we are here and because we continue to be left outside of the body politic of the United States of America, because we keep being, we're not added into the mathematical equation of what it means to be human in the United States of America, our existence, we continue to remind the United States of America that it's a lie, it's a liar. But Black people, we so dope, we so loving, we keep giving the United States of America a chance to be like, well, you ain't gotta stay a liar, you can convert. Conversion is available to you. But United States of America stay one in the backslide and don't want to convert. And so and that's the tension. Folks, our folks were plucked out of a continent and dispersed violently across the diasporas and enslaved. Okay, and now we here, and now we in the United States of America. What a group project! But now that we here, we gonna get to work, or we just what y'all doing? The group project is here. It started. Do the thing. So, child, I don't know, child.
And I think that one of the key things about this moment, and I think also the origin of deciding to have this conversation today, is that Black life is more than Black death. It is.
Ooh.
There are so many things that we care about. There's so many issues that we're working on, whether it be gender justice, whether it be immigration, whether it be workers' rights, whether it be higher education, like organizing, engagement, technology, everything. We are everywhere. We do everything. And so to say that our existence merely is to serve as a mirror, this is selling ourselves short. We are not here. We can do it well, and we haven't given up, and we continue to push forward, but that is not the full extent of our potential or our purpose. And
True.
Like, it becomes that I think we're in a moment right now. I've been reflecting on the past 7 years, dating back to Trayvon Martin, that we're at a point now where I can say, white people need to talk to their white friends. That is not my job. Flashback to 7 years ago, and it's like, here's this dissertation on why we're human, and here are all of the ways that a hoodie doesn't matter. And
they'll wear you down, won't they?
I am here for consultation and advice. I will wrestle with you. I care about you. Wonderful. But I cannot, and you can also pay folks for their labor, right? But it is not Black people's job to continue to educate people on anti-Blackness, white supremacy, and racism. It is not. And I think, listening to platforms and conversations like this is important. Reading, and looking, and questioning, and wrestling with things is a part of your process, but you gotta do the work. And I just don't want to minimize our existence into this moment, while this moment is important.
Krystina, you're echoing just a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Perfect. So I want to kind of also talk about, in terms of you all, like, I know I don't want to do a sharp turn, but I also want to do justice by you ladies and the work that you have done, and introduce yourselves to the community. You all, I'm big fans of you all. I will never not say that. Prior to being at the Miami Worker Center, the first time I actually got I think the first time I even went to the building, the Miami Worker Center, is because of Lutze and what she was doing with the Femme agenda, the author of the Femme agenda. And I stand in awe of you and all the work that you are doing with the social doula. Support. And also Krystina, Office of the New Americans, who's doing amazing work, talking about citizenship and really standing in the gap as a Black woman about immigration. So why don't y'all take maybe a minute or two, and also make sure the conversation can be organic, so we can continue to talk about how we're feeling, what we're experiencing, but also bring the lens of gender, race, and immigration. So why don't we start with you, Krystina? Tell us a little bit about the work you're doing with ONA.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, I know we jumped into it. So Krystina Francois, I'm the executive director of the Office of New Americans. And the office was really born out of the glaring need to connect people who are eligible for citizenship to the resources that they need to actually attain it. So we are an immigrant majority county. 53% of our residents in Miami-Dade County are foreign born. And so we're a community of immigrants that doesn't talk about immigration. And that ends up really hurting us for a variety of reasons, but particularly leaves us vulnerable to fraud and abuse, like notarial fraud, people spending thousands of dollars on applications that never get submitted, or done incorrectly, which then escalates their immigration situation, or they hold off on applying. The average green card holder waits 7 to 8 years to apply for citizenship, while you can apply at 4 years and 8 months, technically. So we've really, in looking at the composition of our community, looked at why is it that people aren't applying? What are some of the barriers for people who are, who have started the process and have been denied, and found that the cost of the application is a huge barrier. Access to the right information is a huge barrier, and also access to quality legal services. So, people are scarred by their experiences with the immigration services. And so we do need to do the extra work to support our community and getting them to be full citizens, because we're here, we're doing the things. And I think that we have a right and a responsibility to fully participate in a community that we live in, that we're raising our families in, that we're working in. So yeah, I am the child of 2 naturalized citizens. I am very passionate about it. I know how much it impacted them in their lives. And I think that if there's anything that I can do to help people reach the finish line, I'm gonna do it.
Right. And I think, as we're saying about making this conversation organic, I think when you talk about what folks who come to America imagine America to be, is the work that you all are still doing to have or push America to live up to what it says it is, right? So I want to turn to Lucy, who's doing amazing. I've always been like fan, like, woo, girl. They're calling all these other people. They need to call Lucy to all these conferences, all these panels.
Yes. Hello.
Please. Circles around them.
Please tell the people. Please tell them.
So
Please.
Lucy, tell us about the social justice doula.
Well, first and foremost, I was born and raised in Miami-Dade County. I'm Dade County to the core. My parents are refugees. My parents are the boat people. Those were the people washing up the shores of the United States of America, right? And so, I'm born and raised in the Dade County. I am of this city. I am of the school. Graduated from Miami Central. Graduated from Florida Memorial. Went to Barry University, where I got my social work degree. And so right now I'm a doctoral student at the University of British Columbia. And so because I am a social worker, that means I believe that people are inherently valuable and worthy. And I also think that people can kick any human condition and can kick any human addiction. So I say that to say the social justice doula is born out of that. Like, I work with communities, I work with organizations to help them live out their social justice values and operationalize them, right? I think it's really, really important that if we care about liberation, we care about justice, how do we create organizations and systems that live up to that aspiration so that the outside world can catch up with the world we've already created within our walls? And so because I'm a social worker, I work in a lot of nonprofits, and I I am a victim of a lot of harm within the nonprofit industry. And so my thing is, like, if you know the difference between a doula and a midwife, the midwife is the person that catches the baby, but the doula is the person that creates the conditions for the baby to come. And so I feel like I hold space and I create the conditions for social justice learning, social justice transformation, and the operationalizing of social justice can happen. How do I do that? I do that by being an anti-racist feminist coach to leaders, to women, and I do that with organizations. So I am just, I believe in justice. I believe in liberation. 1804 is in my blood. So, like, I'm a fight. I always got a machete ready. And I am always ready to walk with and accompany anybody, irrespective of race, gender, class, gender expression. I am always ready to walk with you if you believe in what I believe and if you believe in justice and liberation. And so all of my work, all of my life is oriented around justice, oriented around love, because you really gotta love people in theory and in practice to do what I do. Even because people are not loving, they're not always lovable. But my politics says, I gotta love, so I love. So this is so social justice doula is the expression of my love. And it's hard because sometimes I feel as if I believe more in white people's ability to change than they believe in their ability to change. And that's hard. If you've ever loved someone who didn't love themselves, it's very hard. And so I'm constantly having to do this dance around how do I push, when do I educate, and when do I let go? Because I'm not a control freak. That's white supremacy. So yeah.
Right. Thank you. You ladies are fabulous.
So are you.
And folks know me. I'm Sandra Dennis. I'm the interim executive director of Miami Worker Center. We are a membership organization doing amazing things, have been leading in housing for quite some time. But I also want to shout out our members who've been doing this work for who've been living this experience for all of their lives. Also our domestic workers who are listening, the folks who are listening in Creole and in Spanish. Please let us know if you have any questions, but we're going to go right into the conversation. So these terms, gender, immigration, race, and the intersection, for some folks who are in this space, they get it. And for a lot who are not living in the social justice space, they don't get intersectionality. They don't know how all these things relate. Won't y'all educate us on the intersection of these terms, what these terms mean? Take it away, Lutze. Let's start with you.
So Krystina said something really interesting. So Miami is the future that the rest of the United States is petrified of. What do I mean by that? Meaning the majority of people here are foreign born. So at any given moment, when we were rubbing elbows with people who were not born here, who came to this country young or who came to this country very late. For us in South Florida, that's beautiful. That's our jam. That's what we put in our morning coffee and tea. To other people, that's an invasion. That's called an invasion. But oh well. So we have a really bad tendency in South Florida when we do talk about, or in the United States of America writ large, when we talk about immigration, we tend to be talking about Spanish-speaking immigrants. We don't even think about white Europeans, and we sure enough do not think about or even consider that Black people could be immigrants, right? And so when we're talking about gender, race, and immigration, we understand that Black people, Black bodies live at the intersection of all of these things. And that if you are Black and you are an immigrant, so if Black people already are overrepresented in police interactions because of the fact that we're Black, what do you think happens when you're Black and you're undocumented and you are more likely to come in contact with the police? So in that way, we have to talk about what are all of the intersecting oppressions or systems that could get this Black individual who's also undocumented, who also has their own gender. Because again, if you're undocumented and then, heaven forbid, you're living in your truth as a queer person, as a trans person, as a gender nonconforming person, immigration don't know what to do with you because immigration is very clear and cut. You're either this, you're either that. And so for immigrants who are gender nonconforming, it's very scary because laws have not caught up with the fluidity and the beautifully that human beings come in. So when we're talking about Black people, Black life, being caught up in the immigration system, we have to look at various things because various things are impacting those people's lives and are dictating and shaping how they move within the United States of America.
Yeah, and I think that the key thing, we have to start from the very beginning in the sense that immigration in this country has always been racialized, period. Mm-hmm. And so you cannot separate race from immigration, whether it was at our founding as a settler colonial, state to present day and everything in between. And so when we look at the various waves of immigration, you can see how the state has redefined race and actually has really used immigration policy to define what race in America is. They defined that, South Asians are not white, or were white at a certain point, and then shifted that later on. They defined Chinese immigration based on an extractive and racist set of policies in terms of what people could and couldn't do as temporary immigrants to serve, the labor needs of our country. And then when we look at predating everything up until the 1960s, every country except for Western Europe had a cap on how many people a very minuscule cap on how many people could come to this country. So before the 1960s, after the Chinese Exclusion Act, there was virtually no immigration from Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa, or Asia to the United States. And so when you see the shift in the browning of who is immigrant in the 1960s, we were really confronted with the issue of race, because not only are people coming here to just work, they're actually coming here to live, to bring their families, to establish themselves as American. And that is where, at the same time, we have, racial tensions and issues bubbling up in the Jim Crow era and the civil rights movement. So all of this is intersected. So you really can't think of, and I'm going to say it, immigration as just a Latino issue. It is not. It never happened, and it never will.
That's my dog. Sorry.
So important at really Black parents that we come from an experience of being brought here against our chattel slave, predating the 1960s, a slow trickle of a couple hundred immigrants from the Caribbean and Africa coming, in the early 1900s, and then bam, now anybody, and I know that Haitians Haitians in South Florida and in the Northeast were particularly benefited from this policy change, getting rid of the quota system in our immigration system. To say that you can come here, it doesn't matter what degree you have, what your ties are to the country, what type of skills that you bring, you can come and we'll figure it out. And that in the last 30 years has dramatically clamped down because of the influx of people of color, and particularly Black immigrants coming to the United States. So every time there's an immigration reform up, the first thing that's on the negotiating block by both the left and right is the diversity visa program. This, unfortunately, is how immigrants from Africa come to the United States, right? So our racial politic is manifest in our immigration policy, and even in the transformative change that we want to see within the immigration system.
I'm often, and I think because I'm from an immigrant family, that I knew about immigration. I heard stories about home detention growing up. I knew about Guantanamo. Like, immigration had always been something that had been discussed in my family. And I'm often shocked how many folks who grew up in, let's say, South Florida, or Florida in general, who don't necessarily understand immigration, or don't necessarily buy into, as, let's say, liberals, immigrants being here. How do y'all see that play out in South Florida, specifically Miami-Dade County?
Add a little bit more context. What's the question?
Sure. So to me, just to be very direct, I think that us leading in a conversation about race, gender, and immigration in a county or in a South Florida context where immigration has overwhelmingly been Latina focused, how do y'all see maybe it showing up in Miami-Dade County?
I see it showing up in an anti-Black kind of a way, because even if we're talking about immigration and we're talking about Latinx people are Black too, and like people forget that that like Latinx like is not a race. It's an ethnicity. You can be white, you could be black, you could be indigenous, or you could be a mixture of all three, right? And how does that show up? And so to me, South Florida is supremely anti-black, and the anti-black is it you know, as Haitians we could talk all day about the very particular kind of anti-blackness we've had to survive and whatever. So in South Florida there is just, and it's almost as if people can't think in an interdisciplinary, in an intersectional kind of way, that a black person can be an immigrant. They can speak Spanish. They can come from the continent. They can, like, all black people who are present here are not African American. For a lot of people, that little jump is like, whoo, it's a lot. It's a lot. And there's these assumptions that we are somehow not part of the immigrant narrative, that we are not somehow disenfranchised by immigration. I don't know what people think about Black life, but when immigration comes into the conversation, that's when you really start to see the racism. And I'm glad that you brought that up, Krystina. Both the liberals and Republicans. First of all, the United States of America, Americans, one thing Americans agree upon, irrespective of race and class, is hating immigrants. Now, you add black into that thing, and baby, now you having a party, right? For some people. And so what does it look like when we have been socialized in a xenophobic society, in an anti-black society, and your body lives at the intersection of both? You are foreign born and you're black. Now all of a sudden the hate is coming from any and everybody, because the first, I won't go where I was gonna go. I'll stop there.
Go.
No, I didn't go.
Because there is a lot, if people are being honest, the first time 45 ran, a lot of people were like, yeah, I'm not gonna vote for him. But there were a lot of African Americans, there are a lot of black people who were not particularly mad about what he was saying about immigrants. And we have to be honest about that. Because again, it is a very, it's an American pastime to hate immigrants, to blame immigrants are the reason why X, Y, Z, and a third. That is a very convenient lie, but it is a lie.
And you know what the perfect manifestation of that is? So think about how we often say when we're trying to do economic justice, work on economic justice issues, that there's been a history of separating poor whites from black whites, because at least white supremacy holds up working class white people over black people, because at least they have their whiteness. Think about now that applying to black people and immigrants, right? Mm-hmm. So I may be at the bottom of the pyramid in terms of structural power or access to structural power. However, I'm still better than those people. Mm-hmm. And so that is where not only does xenophobia holds up white supremacy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who are fundamentally opposed to white supremacy to invest in the structure, because it gives them this modicum of power, because at least I am better off than those people. And it's taken me a long time to realize that, because I've always lived as an immigrant. Even though I was born here, my identity has always been that I'm an immigrant. I grew up in my household of once you step into this door, you're in Haiti. You're not in the United States. Whatever, this is not happening in this house, okay? So it was very clear to me from day one.
Hello.
You can live here, but and whatever may happen or however you present yourself, you still have a name with the accent on it, and one of these things is not like the other. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so having to navigate the otherness, right? Really, for me, informed my politic and my analysis and where I stand on things. And I think that one of the challenges, particularly for Haitians in a South Florida context, is this: we've gone through phases of we are, and I'm gonna say it, the untouchables. Mm-hmm. The model minority of, oh no, but at least you're not like the African. right? And then again, it plays into like upholding white supremacy, obviously.
Right.
But that dynamic has been very hard to, as a person who moved here from New York, I am one of those people. Sorry. I've whatever, I've been here for a long time. And one of the things that's hard is to say, people will say, oh, you're Haitian? I know a Haitian. But then when you interrogate them, like, do you have Black friends? Do you have Black people in your life? It's crickets. But you can talk by saying not blame me, okay? Like that is not it. So it's a very, I know this is even really just the beginning of a conversation where we get to interrogate what our thoughts are on who is immigrant, where does racism actually show up. It is really just, this conversation is just the tip of the iceberg. But I will say that Miami in South Florida in general is a very unique place to experience both being Black and immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
At the one side, you are able to step foot outside anywhere and hear Creole in the background. I say that like I step off of a plane, whether it's at Fort Lauderdale or MIA or Palm Beach, I hear my people. Okay, you go to any Publix in South Florida, you will know in the bakery section there is an Asian person there. And so we are visible, but we are not a priority, and our issues are not valid. And this Corona situation has actually amplified that, in the sense of the fact that like we can't even get consistent Creole interpretation about Corona. We're the second largest community in this county.
So it's that it's that anti-Blackness rubbing up against that xenophobia. It's just like, how is in no other major city is if you go anywhere in California or whatever, like wherever there's a huge group of people, everything is accessible. Like I've had a little bit of a privilege to travel in and out and around, and you go into these other major U.S. airports, and you see Signian, you see everything being catered to all whoever is the dominant ethnic group there. But there's a way in which Haitians in South Florida cannot get that level of respect, cannot be seen, and that's not okay. Like I'm old enough and young enough to remember where people who were Haitians did not tell people they was Haitians. Everybody was Bahamian. And if you were light skinned and you had a little bit of color, you was Dominican. You was not Haitian. Right? And so it's like, we just had Haitian Flag Day, right? Teenage me could not imagine that Haitian people that Haitian Flag Day and Pride would be on Instagram, what would be this, would be that. I remember like you had to be ready to square up if someone, you Haitian? Like that was it. That was like the kiss of death. You had to fight. To now, why? Because of that anti-Blackness, right? And so now to where there's pride, there's all that good stuff, but all of that residualness, like in 1983, the United States government blamed HIV/AIDS on Haitians.
Specifically.
Like that is both a xenophobic policy and an anti-Black policy, all being married together, and the Haitian person and the Haitian body, it was the embodiment of that racism. Like the country in and of itself felt okay and good to make this entire group of people an at-risk group of people, and told its nation, its fellow citizens, like, yo, if you don't want that AIDS, you don't want that HIV, stay away from these people. Thank goodness we've all done our work to destigmatize HIV/AIDS, because there's nothing wrong with that. And there's also nothing wrong with being Haitian, right? And so, and again, no apology, no nothing, no recognition of this. They just like, no recognition of like the impact of that had on people who were migrating here at that time, literally being treated as untouchables. And so, again, this is that racism, this is that whatever. And I just think Haitian people in South Florida, there's a way it's very easy to abuse us, to misuse us, to ignore us. It's like everyone gets to project their stuff onto Haitians, and we never and we're still in our own way trying to figure out, like, where do we fit into this fabric of South Florida? Granted, we have our hubs, we have our communities in South Florida, but I still don't feel as if we're fully integrated and baked into South Florida politics in a very serious way that isn't condescending.
Right. And it's just to give a level of the level of pervasiveness. When you think of farm worker, when you think of domestic worker, when you think of service worker, hotel worker, when you think of taxi driver, when you think of doctor, when you think of nurse, when you think of phlebotomist, all of these sectors where actually Haitians are overrepresented, you never once think of any of these groups as being predominantly Black immigrant. So, and that's one of the things that we have been trying to challenge, and the narrative that we've been trying to shift around it, and the visibility of, yes, we are, an immigrant focused organization that has visuals on its website and its social media and its panels that are of people who are melanated like me. Mm-hmm. That is the reality, right? And so it's not just the work of talking about it. We actually have to shift how we are representing the issue. It's not just enough to have interpretation. It's actually doing the community outreach to make sure that people are like who need interpretation actually show up to your event. Right? It's not just celebrating on Haitian Flag Day. It's actually saying, there is a national crisis on the murder of Black people right now. Let me check in on, like, that Black immigrants are actually feeling this trauma too. Or an immigrant rights organization should be speaking about this as well. So I like to find actionable steps. These are ways that you can actually show up.
I mean, this is everything that you all said. Yes. I think that really framing what does South Florida look like, when folks think about Miami specifically, I often think that people see one kind of diversity. And I think it's important that even you all who are Black leaders of organizations, I think you don't see that often. And I think that we should name that as well, that even in leadership, even when people just think about Miami, they don't necessarily see Black people. They don't necessarily see Black immigrants. And that's something that we want to push on and challenge. And Lucy.
Yeah, because, like, Miami has such a rich Black history, like, writ large. And I think people forget that Miami is a Black city. Granted, we're not Atlanta, but I mean, if the wave of immigration keeps looking like it's looking, we might be a baby chocolate city very soon. We might be a baby Atlanta very soon. And so we have to think about, yes, I feel like I constantly have to remind people, I'm not going to say I'm from the real Miami. That might make people feel a kind of way, right? But I am from a very particular kind of Miami where it's Black. It's Black. My Publix is Black. My Costco is Black. Wherever, and not in Black, and represented with Black people across class, right? Across the CNA shopping there, you got the nurse shopping there, you got the nurse practitioner, all those kind of things. So we have to think about, like, we have to remind people that Miami is a Black city, period, and there are lots of Black communities within this Black city, and some of them talk to each other, some of them are cooler with each other during certain times. And if you're gonna be in South Florida, you're gonna do work in South Florida, or you're already be a leader in South Florida, you need to be cognizant of that when you're putting these things together. You having these diversity initiatives, and it's just like, because even if you're talking about Black people, which Black people? Who are you talking about? And depending on which Black people you're talking about is going to also dictate what are their wants and what are their demands and how they feel seen and affirmed. Because how Haitian people need to be integrated is going to be radically different from how our African American kin need to be integrated into the system. But guess what? Both of those things got to happen at the same time. So if people are serious about doing this kind of work in a principled way, people got to expand their definition of Blackness and got to get real familiar with knowing how to be with all the different kinds of Blackness that is present here. Because don't collapse us and don't make us a monolith either.
And I will say another perfect example of that is we have the largest number of Jamaican Americans outside of Jamaica in Broward County and Miami-Dade County. Okay, so it is not to say that black immigrants in South Florida are being Haitian. It is not. It's Ghanaian, Jamaican, Trinidadian, Nigerian,
Caribbean folks,
and Afro-Latinx folks, which consistently, even when we're talking about, right? And so it's a part of do your homework, make the effort, and really take the time to actually look at how you are engaged in different communities, in your hiring practices, in language justice, in your scales of your organization. I can go into the social justice doula to talk about the HR implications, but there are some serious questions about how everybody has some power in their life, whether it's where you spend your time, whether it's how you spend your time, whether it's who you hire or who you work with, who you work for. And so you have the opportunity to actually live your values, and it's not just passively consuming information, but it's actually putting it into practice, like you like to say.
So I want to pause here because we're at 51 minutes. This has been a great conversation so far. I'm not sure if there are any questions from the line. If there were any comments in the live feeds that we want to entertain really quick. And then we want to talk about what does it look like for us to move forward and solve some of these issues that we're talking about.
So any questions in the chat?
Hello, sorry. On my line,
I haven't seen any pop up so far.
on my line.
Okay.
Okay. I love it.
So I want to do if there aren't any questions right now, what we'll do is we'll continue to talk and kind of move into what does it look like for all of us to, I don't want to use the term coexist, but what does it look like for us to be very mindful of these intersections? What does Miami need to do? I know Krystina started, and there was a lot of talk about there was a petition made around interpretation. I was looking at our counterparts in Boston. And Massachusetts were doing it, making sure they're rolling out everything in the languages of the majorities that live in that city. We see it happen in other cities and states. Why not Florida? What's the resistance about? And so, what else should we be seeing to make sure that Black immigrants also, to be very frank, feel as if they have space in Miami? And I also want a really quick side note. Remember, I was a part of this panel, and this person at the panel said that they feel like there's no space for Black people in Miami.
Oh, yes.
And that was such I was like, yeah, that is real. And they're like, Black people live in Miami, and it's as if we're not here. And she's like, from Liberty City to Overtown to City of Miami, Miami Gardens, Opelika, Black people galore. But it's as if they don't live here. How would y'all comment on that?
Well, I'll start because I spent the last 3 years in Canada and I came back because I was in grad school. Miami has a very bad Black brain drain. What does that mean? Because Black people don't feel as if Miami is for them, the minute they have any opportunity, they do tend to leave this city because they don't feel as if they can really bring their full brilliant Black self to fruition. For example, South Florida nonprofit loves the ideas of Black women. South Florida nonprofits very rarely uplift and give Black women executive director positions. Now, I feel really good to be on a call with the fact that both of you are executive directors, and at the same time, you are in a very small class. And so people who have these aspirations to lead in a very specific kind of way, they feel capped by their ability to progress in South Florida, which is why they leave. And so until we address the issues of Black people's ability to flourish in South Florida, that will have an adverse impact on Black immigrants as well. And so the fact is that just Black people's contribution to South Florida is disrespected, is diminished, and it's invisibilized. And I don't know why. Y'all need us. We here. And at the same time, I don't want to get off this call without not saying it's so easy to do that, because we also forget that South Florida is Miccosukee, Seminole, Tequesta Nation. Like, there are indigenous people here. They're not of the past, and we still don't build with indigenous people here. So if this is how we treat the first people of this place, well, everybody who come in is not going to stand a chance. So how do we hold the tension of both of those things? And how do we really have a conversation about whose land are we on, and how do we treat people on this land? How are we in relationship with that land? And how do we treat people on this land with dignity and respect and be in right relationship with them? And we have to check our anti-Blackness, because it's anti-Blackness that drives all of this. It's why African Americans are treated the way they are, and it's why Black people are treated the way they are, anti-Blackness.
And I question for them. I think this actually segues a little bit into the question that is asked. Folks forget that anti-Blackness and white supremacy is not solely an American concept. People immigrate here with their bias, their anti-Blackness, and their concepts of white supremacy. So
hello,
we are not a unicorn.
Just pause there.
Because people be trying to act like this is just American pie. Bull. That's in your black rum cake. That's in your tres leche. You came with that. Don't play.
And it is a combination of, our global colonial history and the stratification of color, and how they divide and conquer. This is like a very condensed. Obviously, there's way more to get into that. That could be a whole other 3-part series. But because of anti-Blackness and colorism, we cannot, as a global phenomenon, we cannot expect a community of immigrants to be inherently better. They're bringing those same notions. And so, when you erase the darker and African descendant folks in your home country, what do you think you're going to do here?
Come on now.
It's not different. And particularly in Latin America, it is not, when you literally erase the existence of Black people in your country,
and indigenous people,
then I cannot expect any better once you arrive here. It is not like as soon as you step foot on American soil, you get an automatic download into everything. That's not how it works. And so that is layered with classism. So just a really quick immigration history lesson. Generally, the first people to leave a country, if there's economic or political upheaval, are the people who have the money and access to be able to do so. So what you have are whiter and more wealthy folks arriving to the US in the first wave of immigration. And then with each successive wave, there is a browning and diversity of economic status that arrives. And so, again, a lot of folks bring and perpetuate the same caste systems that they had in their home country. And we see that a lot in South Florida, where there's a lot of regionalism, where folks who live in Kendall, never go to Homestead, don't go to North Miami. There's a lot, or to Little Haiti, or whatever the stratifications are. And so we cannot have this conversation without talking about class and without talking about colorism. So thank you for that question. And I think that the key to solving, I won't say we can really solve it, but the key to addressing divisions within the Latinx community is to acknowledge that anti-Blackness is inherent in Latinx culture, period.
Hello, watch Univision if you're not sure.
I mean, or any telenovela.
Hello.
There's lots to do with it.
So there's one more question that we can take. We're at the hour mark. How do we put new immigration laws and policies in place? And we didn't necessarily, at least from my perspective, talk about gender or specifically. So why don't we kind of like mix that in, like how these immigration policies can also impact folks in the intersection of gender?
I mean, I'll let the policy person do her thing, but I will say this around gender. If the first wave of immigrants who come to a place are people who have money, as the second and third and other wave comes in, we're also thinking about how is labor gendered and feminized. Who is more likely to come from another country to be a nurse, to be a domestic worker, to be a housekeeper? That's gonna be a woman. That's gonna, and so what does it look like? We have swaths, especially, I know my Haitian folks understand, like, you know, who didn't meet their parents until much later in life because their parents were in New York, were in Boston or in South Florida, working very hard to put their money together. So to bring the kids over, to bring mama over, to bring husband over. And so we have to think about from a gender standpoint, it's easier in some ways for women to migrate, and that easy accessibility puts them at the forefront of disease, sexual violence, all manner of foolishness. Right. And so we have to think about like, immigration is a Black issue, it's a gender issue, it's an economic issue, it's a gender justice issue. Like, it's just like, and again, what does an illegit child, like, you stole the people's land, so how you gonna tell me like who in and who's out? Like, it don't make no sense now. Like, come on now. Like, we have to bring this down to the basic fundamentals. You can't even honor sovereign treaties and all that kind of stuff. What is a border really? If COVID-19 is showing us, oh, you got a border? Oh, you're a citizen of that nation? Oh, okay. Now you got a virus. Now what? If capital is global, if disease is global, why our policies and our thinking can't be global? Come on now.
We're people, right?
I want to drop the mic.
I mean, true.
I just want to, yes. Okay. So there are a couple of things. One being that immigration, just like everything else, is gendered. So when we look at labor-based immigration, we know that generally the first wave of, well, historically, generally the first wave of immigrants are single unmarried men. When we look at especially hard labor that's focused on like manual labor, but then we also know that women have, or like femme-identified folks have a higher chance of migrating based off of family connections, and then also bringing their family, petitioning for their family. So when we saw the shift of our immigration system to family reunification in the 60s, that shifted and feminized our immigration process. The other thing is multiple studies have shown, not just in the United States, but even in Western Europe, that it is easier for women to assimilate and or integrate into their new country because they're seen as less of a threat. So when we layer this racialization of immigrants, like the Black and brown bodies of men are seen as dangerous, whereas the Black and brown bodies of women are seen to be in service. So that when we look at domestic workers, when we look at, like we were saying before, home health care aides, nurses, teachers, seamstress, like textile industries in general, we see women overrepresented because we see their value in that soft labor and the emotional labor that Black women generally provide versus Black men being seen as dangerous, violent, and threatening.
Thank you
In
for
terms
that.
of changing the policies, so we're at this time where immigration policy, while it is set by Congress, it actually is implemented at the state and local level. So for example, the creation of ONA it was a municipal act, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a role for local governments to play in serving, protecting, and supporting immigrant communities, whether that's by giving them access to resources, whether that's language justice, whether that's, housing and other policies that support our people. And then in order to change immigration laws, we need Congress people, both in the Senate and the House, to be on board. And that is where advocacy and like political education are so important for people to understand what is the law right now and what are the things that we can change. And ultimately, we are a democracy, we can change anything that we want to.
Allegedly.
So
So
I haven't up yet. I told you.
So we talked about a lot. We started off just really talking about what we're feeling, what we're experiencing right now, as we continue to watch Black unarmed folks be murdered in the streets. And I think it's important that we use terminology as murder because that's what it is. We also, had a hefty conversation about living at the intersection of immigration, race, and gender. And you all did a phenomenal job really breaking down the issues, dropping the mics. And I want to have you all give closing statements around all the things that we talked about today. Do not forget to plug yourselves. We'll plug you as well so that people can know where to find you. They can pay you all to drop your knowledge that they're not using free. But for you all to help Miami to be better by using your expertise. So go ahead.
So you can find me on these internet streets as a social justice doula on IG. If you like what you heard and you'd like to work with me on an individual level, on an organizational level, contact me. Like, I'm really serious about helping people operationalize their social justice values so that people can feel like Miami is for them because they have a good, safe place to work that sees their Blackness, their queerness, and all the things that they come with, and it's not an antagonizing force. What I really want to say, we started off by talking about, Black death and Black grief. And I just want Black people to just be extra loving and kind to themselves and to each other. Because Black lives already matter to Black people. We know that. That's not up for debate. Now, there are some things within that are up for debate, but for us, we know that. And so let's continue as we nurse this broken heart and as this anxiety is in our body, let's be extra kind to ourselves. Let's be loving with each other. And let's give each other the love that the world does not give us. Because, thank goodness, like they don't get to dictate how I show up for y'all.
Yeah.
And so let's keep that at the center. Let's keep that at the forefront. Let's keep that and be really extra careful. We are still in the middle of a global pandemic. We know this global pandemic and what it's doing specifically to Black bodies. Protect yourself, wash your hands. Yeah, they done said the nation is open, but baby, protect your Black body as best as you can. There's no justice yet in the United States of America. So therefore we have to move in very specific ways to protect ourselves from all the forces trying to kill Black people, because it is an active state of war that we are in against this nation state that we ain't even asked to come here. But that's on a different topic.
Thank you.
I first want to say that I didn't even know how much I needed this conversation until we were in it. So thank you. This was also an act of working through grief. And so thank you, ladies. So you can find me at Francois on Twitter, and also You can follow the Office of New Americans on all of the different platforms. We are here. We have like content where we're doing deep dives into immigration every week. So definitely follow us on Facebook if you want to see, because every week we have a Facebook Live digging into it. And I just want to say that to be a Black woman immigrant in this country is to be in a constant state of conflict. I feel like because we are at the intersection of so many things, it can feel overwhelming, tiring, inspiring, and that it's okay to feel conflicted, and it's okay to sit with all of your different identities, and to honor each of them in a different way. And so I am really thankful and excited about the Femme Fridays because we do need to have a conversation. We do need to have conversations like these on an ongoing basis.
Thank you all so much. I am fan. Like, I could have just sat at the feet of you all. Thank you all so much for showing up for, not for me, but for the members of Miami Worker Center, for the community, for everybody who commented and was overjoyed that we took some time to talk about this. A few reminders, or a few action steps. You all, the census is still happening. If you have not completed the 2020 census, please complete it. my2020census.gov. It is an election year. Locally, there's a huge election. I believe 7 out of 13 of the commissioners are up. And so it's a big year. It's important for us to engage, whatever that looks like for you all. Make sure you're registered to vote and that you can engage. If you're interested in being a member of Miami Worker Center, you can check us out at theworkercenter.org. We're always open and willing and doing the work in Liberty City and other Black communities in Miami-Dade County. Check Krystina out, Krystina Francois at ONA, Office of the New Americans in Miami-Dade, and then Lutze at the Social Justice Doula. You all have been phenomenal. Thank you all so much for this amazing time. However I can be of service to you all, I'm down, 10 toes down, and be kind to yourselves, and for sure, take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. It was amazing. Really, really, really.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you again. So hopefully we'll have to do this again another time.
Absolutely.
Take care.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
And thank you for